Hello, and welcome to Melomaniax, the podcast where we take unbiased deep dives into the biggest musicians and bands of all time. I'm Ashton.
And I'm Dallas. Today's episode was recommended to us by our friend and Discord member Jake, so shout out Jake, who recommended we dive into his favorite band, the Ukrainian metalcore band Jinjer, which means we are going to have all kinds of fun with pronunciation this week. But before we get into all of that, please don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And most importantly, hit us with those 5-star podcast reviews wherever you're listening to this show. We appreciate Apple Podcasts and Spotify in particular. And also, we have a Patreon, which is part of the way this episode came to be. So we offer one $5 per month tier that gives you access to the Discord, as well as a shout out on one of our episodes and the ability to vote on future episode topics. So with that marketing spiel out of the way, let's dive into Jinjer.
Jinjer. Yeah, it sounds like it'd be French, doesn't it? Kind of. Jinjer just sounds like a word you would want to say with the
Yeah,
French
by the way,
accent.
I guess you know if you're looking at this, but it's spelled Jinjer, not like the food.
Yep, there we go. So we actually went and saw them. That was kind of part of our research for this band. Smaller band. But we decided to go and see them in concert, 2 nights ago. So we'll talk about that at the end. So let's dive all the way back to the beginning with the band being formed in 2008, and actually with a completely different lineup than all the current members. So the group that started the band, the original members was, oh gosh, and here we go right in with the names. And I want to go ahead and preface, I am not good at pronunciation, so I apologize for anything that
He's not good at pronunciation in English.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Ukrainian's
And
gonna be real
now
fun.
we're throwing Ukrainian words, and it is
No, we mean absolutely no disrespect, but we are absolutely going to get every one of these names horrifically wrong with our American accents. But we are going to do our best to, as they say, sound it out. So
yeah. All right. So
I don't think it's going to serve us well, but we're going to try.
So for the
Some of these
original
names are like
band,
48 syllables.
right? So for the original band, the singer was Maxim, I believe, Fatulev. Yeah, sure. And the guitar player was Dmitry Oksin. The bass player was Alexei.
Yeah, I was going to say Alexei. But
Svinar?
by the way, none of these are spelled how you think they'd be spelled.
Or
Alexei is Oleksiy.
Yeah. So I believe that's Alexei. And then Svinar. I feel like it's got, they probably say that way better than I do. And then the drummer, this first name, Vyacheslav Orimenko. That's the best I'm gonna do. And that's the original lineup of a singer, bass player, guitar player, and a drummer. And the OG lineup actually released the EP Objects in Mirror Are Closer Than They Appear. And I actually couldn't find this one to listen to, which is super disappointing because I wanted to hear what their original singer sounded like, as they famously have a female vocalist that a lot of people, it's their biggest draw to the band. But so I wanted to try and get the original group, but I think that one is just like a Ukrainian
Scrubbed.
release only. Yeah, you could probably only find it like at a small store over there, and especially with what's going on over there nowadays, I just don't think gonna be able to find that one. If you do, let me know.
All right.
I would love to find a way to listen to it.
I'm gonna tag you in for some support here on this pronunciation. I'm gonna take a stab at this next paragraph.
All right.
So shortly after that EP, the band replaced the original singer with the singer we all know now. Her name is Tatiana, and her last name is Shmyluk.
That sounds good to me.
And they added a second guitar player, Roman Ibramkilov. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna try to disrupt.
I think you got it. Yeah.
Too much with the. Yeah. Anyway, just 2 years later, in 2011, the bass player was replaced by Eugene Abdukanov, and the drummer was replaced by Alexander Kozhashek. This is quite the language. This new lineup put together an EP in 2012 that was called Inhale, Do Not Breathe.
Which I did get to listen to that one. You can find that EP on Apple Music and whatnot. Spotify.
Oh, nice.
Wherever
So
you
that's
listen to music.
their quote, like
That's
first one.
that's
then.
like the first thing that we could listen to.
Right.
So they actually then followed that. Jinjer's debut album was Cloud Factory, and that was actually self-released in 2014. And the album would later be reissued in 2018 when they got signed to their current label, Napalm. So no real singles to talk about today in general. There's not a whole lot of info on their albums, and I don't think they really do a format where they have singles and any songs meant to hit charts, because charts are pretty rough to metal bands. But I guess the closest thing to a single would be the song Outlander from this album, and that's just the one that has the star beside it on Apple Music. So I guess that just means it's popular among fans. But yeah, I was kind of thinking like metal bands don't really get a whole lot of love in the Billboard 100. And then I was thinking like on top of that, like what metal bands have done well in that category? And I mean maybe Metallica, Black Sabbath. Do you know any?
That's a good point. Probably not Black
I was
Sabbath.
like,
They were all their big stuff would have been too early, I would have thought.
Yeah, and I don't even think anybody could. I don't think anybody would actually get high on the list either. I want to say when we did Tool had like a song that hit the top 100, but it was like 80 something, and it was like, what is that doing there?
Yeah.
But
Let's
I
see.
think that might be like the exception. But I was like, maybe I bet Metallica could go high up on the Billboard 100.
For
Especially
sure.
during the
And then
90s.
you also got to consider like 80s metal. Like a lot of those when metal was actually big.
True, yeah. I guess in the
But then
80s,
by today's standard, it's like a different kind of metal,
yeah. That's what I was kind of curious about, is more this like modern style metal. There's no way it could show up on the Billboard 100, right?
No, it's a
Maybe
niche. It's a niche thing. The same as like hardcore rap and like
Maybe
hardcore any
Slipknot?
fringe stuff is not going to make it.
I feel like Slipknot could possibly maybe make it on
Yeah,
there.
here's a list, a rough list of multiple metal bands have had hits on the Billboard charts, including Guns N' Roses. But see, I mean, where's the line for hard rock to heavy metal?
Yeah, I was just about to say,
I would
like,
never call Guns N' Roses
yeah, I was
metal.
like, I would never call them metal, even though I know that they're like, in the 80s,
Slipknot-
like metal was so different than what we consider metal nowadays.
Yeah,
Even in the
yeah, true.
90s, by definition, 90s is really where that like all the different subgenres really started to like develop and form and take their separate paths. I feel like.
Yeah. Slipknot's on there, Wage War, Metallica, and Ghost. Metallica seems to be the most clear cut, like Billboard Hot 100, and it has like 4 or 5 songs.
Okay,
Slipknot was
yeah.
Billboard 200, it says. But Slipknot's been nominated for multiple Grammys.
Okay. Yeah, so not many.
So
but
we'll get into that when we do their episode.
yeah, for sure. I was just kind of curious, like, have any broken the plane? But other than those, so. And this debut album actually featured a new drummer in Yevhen Mantulin.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So this is their
This
third
is,
drummer now, I believe.
Yeah. Some high turnover there. This is when the band began international touring and were booking their own shows. So right after playing on the new album, their new drummer, Yevhen, fell out of a third-story window and suffered severe injuries, leaving him unable to continue drumming. So that's terrible. He was replaced by Dimitri Kim, and the original guitar player, Oxen, finally left the band in 2015, leaving no original members and putting the band back to a solo guitar player. There would be fun to do a little list of bands that actually have 0 original members, because there's quite a few.
Yeah, that'd be a cool list to see. I didn't know this was going to be one of them. That's kind of it's kind of interesting, especially such a newer band, especially like such a newer band, like forming in 2008 and like.
Well, yeah, the way those bands always get you is they always had like a lineup in the very, 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 very beginning that people don't ever really consider like the band,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, technically, it's always a technicality, it seems.
Well, no one survived original members with this one, so they were quickly. That's why I was so curious to hear that first EP with all the original members. I was like, I wonder if it was like a completely different direction. Is this the type of music? Like, I was just so curious, and I'm sure I could do a little more digging to find it, but it didn't seem readily available. So, moving along. So after 2 years of touring, Jinjer released their second album, King of Everything, or Kings of Everything, I believe, on July 29th, 2016. And this album actually had what I'm going to call a single, and this is Pisces. Pisces placed number 74 on Metal Hammer's 2021 list of 100 greatest metal songs of the 21st century. So not bad there. And Pisces also was like the song that blew this band up on the internet. Like what really, got them like, I say famous, but this was like their first big moment. It was on all the social media platforms, TikTok and stuff, because they released a video and it blew up on YouTube. I looked at it this morning. The video has about 87 million views today, so that's not bad. And this was actually the first song I ever heard by Jinjer, because Jake had me listen to the song, then he had me watch the music video, and then of course it was like a big reveal that the girl is the one who does all the screaming parts, because I didn't really put that together. When you just listen, you're like, all right, there's a girl singer, there's a screamer, okay. You kind of associate it as two people, but it's the same chick. It's Toddy doing all the screaming and stuff. So, but that song's really good. Yep. They actually did not play it at the show. I think it's one of their possible encores, probably, between the other one that we heard.
Yeah. So shortly after the release of King of Everything, Jinjer changed drummers. That's hard to say. Jinjer changed drummers for a final time, landing on Vladislav Ulasevich. Try my best to just power through that one, which completes their current lineup. So Jinjer followed their second album by committing to 2 European tours. That would be followed by their first North American tour. And they toured alongside Cradle of Filth and the North American leg. Following their 2-year commitment to touring, they released a 5-track EP in January of 2019. This was called Micro.
Yep, and then they followed Micro with their third studio album, which they called Macro. So kind of makes sense.
I really like that. That's clever.
And that would be released October 25th, 2019. Real quick, this is the album art that is just so sick that I love. It's like the blue moon or whatever, the orb thing, like moon looking. Anybody out there, you got to look up this album artwork. It is sick. This also is the album that has like some reggae influence. There's like 1 or 2 songs that have like this like reggae kind of funk in there. It's very interesting, but I like this album nonetheless. And I like this one a good bit. I don't think it's my favorite, but it could fight for my second favorite. And unfortunately, the touring that they had planned to follow this album ended up getting snubbed by COVID. So they ended up releasing a live album called Alive in Melbourne around November 2020 to kind of hold people over until they actually released their 4th studio album.
Yep, and that 4th album was called Wallflowers. And that was released August 27th, 2021. This was their 2nd album in a row to land on Loudwire's Best Rock Metal Albums of the Year. This album didn't really have any singles either, but the song Vortex became a fan favorite, and that was actually their encore when we saw them. Mm-hmm. A little less than a year after the release of this album, in March of 2022, Jinjer announced they would be pausing their careers in order to focus on Ukrainian relief efforts. And a few months later in June, the band received permission from the Ukrainian Ministry of Culture to leave the country and become ambassadors of the nation. That's pretty cool.
Yep, and that, of course, deals with the Russia invading Ukraine thing that happened around that time. So I think they haven't been back to the country since then. So as of recently, Jinjer's been touring, and in June, a couple months ago, June 2024, they announced the completion of their 5th studio album, and actually are currently debuting some new songs at their shows right now. And I think we got 1 or 2, for sure we got one of the new songs. I can't remember the name of it, but I remember her saying, do you guys want to hear a new song? So we at least got 1. There might have been 2 at the show we went to see. So so those are also, and I believe they're releasing some singles right now on Napalm's YouTube channel, which is where their music videos go through. So I think there's 1 or 2 new singles for that album on there as well with music videos. So now that's literally the only information on this band. So they're still kind of coming up, becoming a little better known, and it was pretty fun. But we're going to talk about the show that we went to see this week. And you actually were you there to see both of the previous opening bands, or did you?
Yeah, we showed up in Born of Osiris's. So the lineup was Born of Osiris, Hannah B, and then Jinjer. And we showed up at Born of Osiris' third song,
Okay,
which is
nice.
super unfortunate because their second song is my favorite by them. So I
Oh
literally missed their
no.
song. I mean, like, I missed their song by like 40 seconds.
Oh no, dude.
So one thing we do in my family, which is my wife showed me how to do, which I would recommend people do if you're into this kind of thing. If you go to setlists.fm, it's a really good website, and they have band set lists, obviously, like it sounds. But it's really cool. I mean, you can go back to like the 70s and see like what the Grateful Dead played at like January 5th and this, whatever. So it's really cool to do that kind of thing. And then also you can go like, for example, we went to see Jinjer. So we went to Jinjer on their tour they're on now, the show the night before us, and pulled up the set list, and we were able to see the openers and their set list as well. And then my wife makes a playlist of the songs so we can like, she likes to really know what she's going to listen to before she listens to it. I guess I like a little bit of surprise, but it is nice to be able to reflect when you're watching the song live, and you can be like, oh, I like this one. And you can look down and be like, okay, it's that one. I'll go ahead and add it to my playlist,
Yeah, I
That's
like
a nice thing to
that you
do.
guys did that. That's really cool. I've never really thought about looking up the set list. I think I've looked up set list one or two times before, but as far as like going to the show and then looking it up and then the playlist,
Yeah.
I am so sorry. I had to sneeze. It came out of nowhere. Anyways, yeah, so it's pretty crazy to be able to have that playlist. Like, I'm gonna start doing that honestly before the shows, just so I
Yeah,
can
it's a
like
good
know
tip.
the
And you
songs
can
that
go
are
back,
like
like
being played live, like exactly.
like for example, just I'm going to put in Guns N' Roses, and you can go back to 1985. This is, 2 years before Appetite for Destruction. November 22nd, 1985, Guns N' Roses at the Troubadour in Hollywood. And here's what they played. Reckless Life, Shadow of Your Love, Welcome to the Jungle, like covers. Back Off Bitch, which didn't even come out until Use Your Illusion. So like it's kind of cool. You can go see. That's just, one example. You can go back to whatever band you want to go see. But the way they use it is they find the band you're going to see. They're toured now. Look at the night before, 2 nights before, or whatever, and you're probably going to get a similar thing. And then you can make a playlist and check it out.
There'll be occasional
And you can see like
differences.
Amy immediately saw like, oh, they're not playing their 2 biggest songs, which also happen to be her 2 favorites. So she's like, they're not even playing those. So
Yeah, one of them ended up being an encore, right? Or was it 2 different songs?
Vortex was another one, but Amy's 2 favorites, which
Gotcha.
I think also are their 2 biggest. She said they didn't play.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah, so let's review the show. Let's go over it. So Born of Osiris played. They're phenomenal. I was really surprised to see them opening. I mean, they started at the tick of 7:30, I guess, because we got there about 7:30 and they were already 3 songs in. So, still though, I've never seen that many people there for the opener like that. Like usually, 7:30 doors open. It's kind of like first band's playing to maybe a third of the room, half the room. This room, I didn't see it get any more full for Jinjer by the end of the night. Like it stayed that full the whole time.
Yeah, it seemed like everybody was a fan of all 3 bands pretty equally.
Well, Hanabi in the middle is the band that I don't think anybody really knew. So they're 4. They look to be very young Japanese ladies, and they come out and they're dancing to like it sounds like J-pop or something, and they're doing their little anime dances, and they're all wearing like little skirts and shirts. They look like Snow White, and big pigtails and all this, very anime looking. And everybody's kind of like, okay, what is this? And then they bust into the first song, and she just lets out the like most insane low scream you've ever heard in your life, and everyone in the crowd at once was just like, "Oh God, oh okay." They came to play.
Yeah, dude, I wish I
And
could
then
have
they
been
just-
there for that.
That first scream, dude, you could feel it. Everyone in the room's head turned, was like, "Oh my God!" Like she had so much power, and she couldn't have been like 5 foot, like 70 pounds.
That's great.
Tiny, and the big pigtails and the little fluffy, like she really was like dressed like Snow White, kind of. That's what I say. But yeah, they were cool. Their music was interesting. Maybe not for me. I went back and listened to some of their albums. It's really not for me, but seeing them live was really cool. Born of Osiris remains my favorite of the night by far. They are just absolute monsters, and I've been following them since like 2008, 2007, something like that, when their first album came out. And got to meet them and get a picture, get a poster, and all the autographs and all that stuff. It was kind of cool. Really nice guys. So it was cool to do that. Their drummer is just an absolute beast. I'll have to send you some of his stuff on Instagram. It's just the stuff he does with his feet is just, I don't know how a human does it.
Yeah, I wish I could have got there in time to see them for the drumming performance.
Yeah, he was amazing
for that.
And then Jinjer came on. They came on. You were there for all of Jinjer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you got there during the break.
Yeah, when I was walking up, I could hear Hannah B doing their closing speech, basically. Cool. Like I could hear them, wrapping things up while I was walking through the parking lot.
That's cool.
So, yep.
Yeah, they were very cool for sure. So we got to see all of Jinjer, which is why we were there. So that makes sense. And what were your thoughts? So now you're here. What are you thinking?
So we had our individual complaints that we identified pretty early with sound, but outside of the sound, I really spent especially where I was standing, most of my time went to just watching the bass player and the drummer, especially where that's about all I could see. Occasionally, the singer would come into frame, but there was like a pole right in front, and I just didn't feel like moving. But so we weren't too fond of the snare, but
it's interesting because
the other snare, he has two of them. I'm gonna explain how he has his drum. Yeah, I want to explain his whole drum kit. It's pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, do it.
But so he's got a snare, his main snare, which is it's not a very deep snare, so it already has a pretty high tone. And it just doesn't have that depth that we want with that style of music. But he's got the snare, and then right above to the left, he's got I believe that's where his open hi-hat is. And then on the left and right of that are like two huge, one of them's a ride cymbal, and the other is like a ginormous crash. And I think left of that is his China cymbal. And on that left area, he's got a floor tom or something, like 2 or 3 toms to his left. And then on the right side of him, he's got another hi-hat that's closed, another snare, and then another tom to the right of that. So he actually has snare, tom if you're going from left to right, just like with the regular, it's super, super weird. So you can do everything ambidextrous no matter where you're at on the kit. There's like a ride and a hi-hat and a snare for you to play no matter which way you're turned. So that was kind of interesting already, not having upper rack toms at all, which would also make sense for our other complaint was that the toms had no volume at all. So when he would go to do a fill, it would kind of just be like a quick silence almost is how it felt. So that was kind of unfortunate, but there weren't a whole lot of tom fills anyways. This dude he clearly loves his cymbals. I don't know if you paid attention to that, but I think he has more cymbals than drums, and it's not even close on his kit. So, but as far as the playing and stuff, they love doing blast beats and they love doing variations of the blast beats. I don't know if you were hearing that, where it would be blast beat for just a couple of beats, and then it would go into something else and then back. And you were mentioning the time signatures were all over the place at different times. So they wrote some mean riffs, dude. They could really get me moving my head at some times. So I really enjoyed it actually. Overall, the performance, I thought the vocals were great. Well, there was one other thing I wanted to give him praise for, and I think I forgot. Maybe it'll come up when you're talking about him. But
yeah. So for me, throughout the first part of the night, Born of Osiris, to go back to them, they didn't have a bass player on stage. They had 2 guitarists, drummer, and a vocalist. I've seen this with 4 or 5 bands recently. It just seems to be a trend. And I understand why. Everything's gotten so expensive that touring has always been expensive. But now it's if you have a choice between bringing a keyboard player out who plays supportive parts, or putting it on a track, keeping that guy at home, saving on the hotel, saving on the food, saving on the fuel, saving on the bunks. It's a no-brainer,
Yeah.
So, and people are increasingly making that decision with bass players as well, which I'm sure bass players are not happy about. But it is what it is. Every band's. Hardy made that decision. He's touring on a massive level. He can absolutely afford it, and he's just not doing it. So, I wonder what the thought process is there. But with their bass tracks on tracks, meaning they're being played, we're hearing them, but they're not being played on stage by a human. The bass was way too quiet. And then in Hanabi, they had a bass player. Bass was way too quiet. So I was really not looking forward to Jinjer having their bass be too quiet as well. It drives me nuts. I want the bass to be like penetrating my chest. Like I want to feel it. Mm-hmm. And all I was feeling was kick drum, which is fine. But it's like, dude, I'm not the bassist. Like, just send him home. What are you doing? Like, you know? Thankfully, Jinjer's bass was rocking. That guy was an amazing player and just had an amazing tone. And it was actually rocking. Unfortunately, the snare and the toms, were a big letdown. Born of Osiris had a nice trigger on their snare. It really sounded like a cannon. I would have expected a band like Jinjer to do the same because they had a trigger on their kick. Their kick sounded amazing. It was clicky. It was punchy. Great. It was big. But their snare there was clearly no processing or trigger on it. It just sounded like dunk, like you just hit a snare in a room. Yeah. It's like, dude, you could have put a trigger on that and like really made this rip, but you didn't. And then the toms, you could have done the same thing. You could have triggered them to add a little more punch and beef to them. And also just turn them up. I see that with a lot of sound guys. It's like, just turn it up, dude. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the issue with the toms and the frequency, the only time you could hear toms is when no one else was playing. So if there was a drum fill and there was silence from the other instruments, you could hear them. But my issue is that like because he only used those like couple of floor toms, that's it. You know, he has a lack of toms already. So but the toms he's using are a lower register. So whenever he would do those fills, like the bass is going crazy the whole time. Like it is not simple bass parts that he's playing. And the bass tone would just kind of drown out the sound of the toms because it's like a lower frequency that's like a lot easier to like drown out other similar frequencies. So I feel like it was just kind of drawn out. But on the flip side, like you said, I enjoyed hearing the bass because he was such a phenomenal player. I think he's definitely one of the main guys for their sound. It seems like when I watched the interview, him and the singer were like the two that did the most talking throughout the whole interview. So I feel like they're probably the front runners for writing a lot of the music. I remember what I was going to say. This band, I don't know why, but even during the discography and like some parts of their songs and listening to them, dude, they have this Rage Against the Machine sound like that comes out here and there where like even in the vocals, like the riffs and the drum, like everything will come together and you'll be like, wait, this kind of sounds like Rage Against the Machine for a second. Like they just hit these groove pockets that sound so similar. And I even think like some of the vocal patterns that Tati does sound a lot like Zach De La Rosa. So like I don't know. When those parts happen, I really enjoyed it. I'll have to show them to you specifically. Like, I think I pointed one or two out during the show, but there's just like these times where I'm like, man, they just have this like rage groove going. Really dug that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There were a couple times where you pointed it out, and I was like, oh yeah, that is kind of like that. Because at first glance, you would think, nah, no way.
Yeah, because
they're like kind of come through.
Yeah, they're a little harder, obviously, than Rage is. I wouldn't consider Rage Against the Machine metal in any kind of like in some facet, or like some ways. I guess you could look at it from that, but they're just like heavy rock, sometimes like funky. I don't even know what to describe them as. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, dude, a fun game that you and I could play weekly is like you have to guess. So we'll display like 5 musicians or artists, and you have to guess the exact genre that they're like listed as, like the exact subgenre. Like I know, like a band would be like in rock, but are they hard rock? Are they progressive rock, alt rock? That kind of thing. Like, and see how many you could guess like exactly to a T. I thought that'd be funny. Interesting.
That would be really funny.
Just because like sometimes I'll read it and I'll be like, wait, he's listed, or they're listed as blank, like I wouldn't have expected that. Albums are fun too, because different artists, especially recently, I feel like we've been doing a lot of artists that have a lot of music evolution in their discographies. So it'd be interesting to list.
Yeah, that's true.
Like what is the original Train album listed as? Is that rock, country, or pop? Like,
yeah, I've heard acoustic rock. I've heard
acoustic rock. Yeah, that's why I'm like, what would the exact thing be? Because I'm sure like their newer one, I'm sure they had one or two that are just listed as straight pop recently. I'd have to imagine.
But
just
sure.
those kind of like subgenre knowledge, which I don't have like any of. So I think I would have to develop. But
So what are your overall, and before we get into the ratings, what are your overall like thoughts on Jinjer? Good, bad, otherwise?
it's good. I'm curious to listen to their fifth album. Everyone knows it. I guess not everybody listening knows, but it's not exactly my preferred genre of music to begin with. I'm not super big into the screaming, but I do like heavy riffs. I like metal drumming to an extent. So there's like parts about it that I like, and so I try and focus in on the parts that I like. One thing I do like about Jinjer, the screaming, I can actually understand the vocals, like the lyrics, a little easier with her, the way she screams. So that's kind of nice. But overall, I'll definitely listen to that fifth album. I'll definitely go back to their music now and again. I want to add one or two of them to my drum playlist just to challenge myself.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
Yeah, they've got a couple.
My thing with Jinjer is when I listen to metal, I'm really looking for like a groove and a hook. And hook not in the same way as like a pop hook, although I like those too. Just something that I could kind of, hook me in, bring me in, something, and that groove is key. I don't like blast beats. Anytime you go into a blast beat, I kind of tune out. It's not something I can like bob my head to. I don't find it enjoyable.
Yeah.
I need that like just that heavy head bobby where your eyebrows go down and you're just like, yeah, that's nice. I need that in metal. And Jinjer doesn't have a lot of that for me. There's times where they almost get to it, and I'm like, here we go, and then they turn left and go a different way, and I'm like, oh man, I almost loved it. Like,
yeah, no,
I find that happening with them more than anything else, where it's like, oh, that was so close to being something I really loved, like, and then they take it in a different direction, which is what makes them, but it's also what makes me not love them that much.
Yeah, and that's what I meant.
They didn't have a lot of hooks.
Beats. Yeah.
Live, it seemed like every song was kind of a regurgitation of the song before it with very small, like I would not have been able to tell you that those were different albums they were performing stuff off of. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It all kind of sounded the same. Now, part of that is being metal. I get that. Like that's the genre. It's, it's going to have that metal sound. So I get that. But, I don't know. It didn't have something to really hook me in. I think a lot of people are into this band because they find Tatiana attractive. Mm-hmm. And I definitely see that. Not my thing, but I definitely see why people like that.
Yeah, right.
And I know for a fact that's definitely helping them, not hurting them. I'm not saying that's the only reason people are into him at all, but it definitely doesn't hold them back. So, so that's you gotta admit that aspect as well. That definitely plays a factor.
Yeah, and
same with Spirit Box and a lot of these other bands as well.
Yeah, she's got good vocals for what they do, but I feel
she's great. It doesn't take away from her vocals at all. That's why I'm saying it doesn't hurt them.
Yeah.
It helps.
I do want to see less blast beats personally as well. They're not very original. They're not super expressive, and they just kind of are mind numbing.
It's almost like filler. Like, oh, yeah, the blast beat will go
yeah. Like it's like the default just in metal. Like, all right, we'll hit a blast beat till we can figure out what to actually do or where to go.
Now,
with this.
His blast beats were incredible. He had
his timing.
Point.
Yeah, I was gonna say, his timing though. Like, dude was never off on a blast beat.
I didn't see one mistake from behind the drum kit, and he's not playing easy stuff.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I didn't see one missed note, one drop stick, one oops meant to hit that tom, nothing. Like, it was just like a freaking robot back there.
Yeah, that dude was technical as hell.
In the best way, not in a bad way.
For sure. I wish I got to see the guitarist a little more, or like the guitar player. I didn't get
he was on the opposite side of the stage as we were.
Yeah, so I didn't really get to see a whole lot of him, but the bass and the drums, dude, solid on that band for sure.
Gotta have it.
I'd like to see them in a different genre. The bass player and the drummer. Like, I just want to see what they can create outside of metal. Like what kind of like funk grooves or something they could do. That'd be sweet.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I think we've talked about that enough. Let's hit those ratings.
Let's do it. So we rate every band out of 6 categories. Each category is out of 5. We average them at the end for a total. Those categories are creativity, evolution, replayability, cultural impact, emotional connection, and nostalgia factor. For me, I think today is going to be a pretty low rating, and that doesn't mean I hate this band, but it's just I'm looking at some of these, and I'm thinking of what I'm going to rate it, and I think it's going to be, in the 2 to 3 range at the best.
I gotcha.
So let's start with creativity. What you think of creativity? We define as creativity in the space. So in the world of metal, how creative is Jinjer? When you look at a band like Sleep Token, in the world of metal, they are like a 5 of creativity. They're doing something that's different that we haven't heard before, that's really out there. What are you thinking Jinjer is on a creativity?
Gosh, I'm like at a 2, but also like I wouldn't.
I was at a 2 first, and then I was like, well,
I could put a 3 because
give them a little more credit. Yeah,
their singer is unique. She doesn't just scream; she also has good like actual vocals, and she mixes the two together, which is unique. That I'd say that's a unique draw to the band.
That reminds me of another qualm I had with this band, which I was talking about. So they have a lot of like periphery style guitar riffs where it's not just like chords. The riff is like it's like all over the place, And she sings over it. She's just like, yeah, yeah, and you're like, whoa, what? Like, that's not something you sing over, dude. Like, scream over that part, because you're singing. What ends up happening is the singing just sounds horrifically out of key because the guitar is not doing anything that's giving you a harmonial center.
I got
a center of harmony where you're like, oh, here's the chord. She's singing over the chords. She sings so good. It's not like that. She's singing great, but he's playing so many different conflicting, nasty sounding metal notes and singing over it. It just ends up making the singing sound bad in my ears. And
I was going to say, you have highly trained
not all the time,
ears,
but I caught that in several of their songs, and I was like, oh, it sounds like she's really out of pitch, and she's not. She's a great singer. I would have chosen, and maybe this is why I'm not in Jinjer, I would have chosen to scream over those parts, make it atonal, right? Get that power and that aggression going in that part, and maybe pull back and sing over some of the parts where the guitarist is doing less, or the music's doing less, where you can really shine with those melodies. That was something that really caught my ear and kind of turned me away, like, ooh, that doesn't, especially live. I was like, that sounds like she's singing bad,
Yeah.
Which we know she's not. She has the skill to sing however she wants to sing, so she's being deliberate and singing what she wants to sing well. It's just not matching.
It's just a way that,
in my opinion,
that's just coming down to a songwriting.
Yeah, for sure.
Critique probably.
And it wasn't like that in every song and every part, but I definitely caught a few of those.
It just gets busy. I think it's
maybe rethink that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Evolution. I personally, and I mentioned this earlier, would not have known they were different albums that they were performing live, other than the fact that it's obvious, they did 12 songs. They're not all from the same album, but I'm going to put that Evolution at like a 1 or a 2, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm at a 2. The only album that really stands out from the others is Macro. That one definitely, they mess around with a little more progressive and that reggae sound.
I'll telling you to 2 for that.
They kind of mix into that album. But the other 3 albums, I would agree they have their sound and they stick to it. And remember, guys, like Evolution, like AC/DC, classic band. That's super famous, super great. Yeah, it's a 1 on Evolution. Like they have their sound and they stick to their sound. They don't try anything new. And we're not
Iron Maiden as well.
And so that's why some of these, like, you have to take our ratings like with a grain of salt, because there's going to be bands that we enjoy that still get low ratings for some of these like.
Yeah, for sure. And us, and by the way, we're not gods of music. We don't decide the rating for you. You decide your own rating.
Yeah, exactly.
This is just our personal ratings and what we think, and we do our best to explain it. And then we'd love you guys to push back on some of these if you feel like that's the case. Replayability. I mean, I'm going 3 on this because there's a few songs that I have in my playlist, and I like to replay them when they pop up because they do have that groove and that hook and that thing that I'm looking for. They definitely hit on that sometimes. Unfortunately, I don't think they have a single song that really grabs me the entire song. I actually don't know that there is a metal band that does. Because even my favorite metal bands, there's parts of the songs where I'm like, I could do without this part,
Yeah, no, I feel you there. Yep, I'm actually gonna disappoint the masses with a 2 on the replayability, just because it's not necessarily my favorite genre. Now, like you said, there's a couple of the songs I definitely will add to like a workout playlist or whatever. Like I have 2 or 3, I'd say, that I'd listen to over and over, or not over and over again, but I'd listen to them on, I'd listen to them again, but I don't think any of them stood out as one that I need to listen to it like 10 times in a row to get it out of my system type of.
I'll have to send you the Born of Osiris one that I really like. It's called Bow Down.
Definitely. I'd be curious.
Yeah, it'll go on your gym playlist, I bet. So fun, quick divergence from this about Born of Osiris. So they came out with that first album. It was called The New Rain, and it was good. It was really good. It got them a lot of traction and stuff. This was probably 2008 or 2007, somewhere in there. But the quality of that album, most people agree, does not sound very good. So a few years ago, I think it's like 2016, 17, 18, 19 maybe, they went back and redid it, and they called it The Eternal Rain. And I guess they maybe changed a few things, but mostly they just re-recorded it and made it sound like modern and cool. And it's so much better, dude. I'll send you the A and the B on that after this. That brings us to cultural impact. Now here, I'm going to go with a 2, and the reason I would go with a 1, and that's not in a shot at them. They're just a new young band. That any new young band is going to have a cultural impact of a 1 or less. I'm going to bump them to a 2 because they're Ukrainian and they're doing the Ukrainian ambassador thing. Now, whatever your opinions are on that situation, I'm not here to get into any of that or express any opinions, but it does have an impact on culture, at least in their homeland.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why I bumped them from a 1 to a 2.
Yeah, I'm right there with you at a 2 out of 5. I'm going to match you on that one for the same reasons. I was thinking about going to 3 because of that, but they're not in like a super saturated genre, I guess. So like even their outreach is going to be pretty limited anyways, being in the metal scene. But
that brings us to the last 2, emotional connection and nostalgia factor, both of which are going to be at a 1 for me. And that brings my total rating for Jinjer to a 2 of 5. Where are you at? Ashton's at the same.
I'm at the same for these. I don't really have any connection or nostalgia to them. It's no nostalgia because they're pretty new for me. I just recently only listened to them for the first time, probably within the past couple months. And then I normally just have a low emotional connection with most music, but that's not to say that there's the occasional that gets me. So, but this is definitely not one of them.
Yeah, I do. I tend to lean that same way. That brings you to, I think, maybe your lowest rating ever.
Dude, I think so too. But I don't want that to. I don't dislike this band. It's probably more so just falls in a genre that I don't understand fully yet. But yeah, my lowest rating.
You got to get the gateway into metal
out of 5.
Yeah, 1.8.
But they were good. And I think we've had some others that I like and had lower ratings. So, but yeah, I think this is my lowest.
That's kind of the fun of the ratings. Yeah, for metal, I found you have to have a gateway. Like for me, it was Linkin Park early on. You had a lot of singing and hooks and just general rock. But then every so often, Chester would scream, and you're like, "Oh, what's that? That's cool." And then you get into it a little deeper, and you go into I don't know, whoever else. And they sing and scream a little more. And then you go into a band that screams a little more than they sing. And then you go into a band that doesn't sing at all. And you start kind of gatewaying your way into, the heavy stuff. That's how I found it. And that's how I think a lot of people found it. It just jumping straight into like Whitechapel. You're kind of like, what is this? Isn't Taylor Swift? What is this? Like, you know what I mean?
Can
like,
you imagine
this is a very different thing.
Getting all the Swifties straight to Whitechapel. That'd be crazy.
There you go. But for me, it's my friend Paul you remember Paul?
Yep.
Back in high school, because he was the biggest metalhead, and he was really eloquent at the time, and he would describe things really well. And he said, it's about, so all music is about kind of delivering a message, right? And metal and screaming is it's just another different way to deliver that message that's more aggressive. It doesn't like take anything away from the message itself. It's just a different way of delivering that. And that kind of opened up some doors for me. I started getting into it, find a few of those breakdowns that really get your head bobbing, find a few of those hooks that you really like, and pretty soon you're kind of in that world. Not to mention you throw on the right hook, the right groove, the right breakdown when you're at the gym, and just watch those reps fly.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm
so surprised. There you go. That's our kind of a 2-for-1 episode there with the breakdown of the band and then the concert review as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I don't think I have any more to add on this. I'll definitely have to keep. I will have to keep track of how metal bands do on my ratings as time goes on. We'll see if I become more
That's true.
favorable or less favorable. Maybe I just continue to listen to the genre and just decide it's not for me, or maybe the other thing happens and I get even more and more into it. So we'll see. I'm excited.
Yeah, I would be hesitant to write off an entire genre. There's always going to be bands and music inside of any genre that you like and that you don't like.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, but
like,
as far as I need to find a favorite.
All music is different music, you know?
Yeah, it'd be cool to discover a favorite metal band.
That's true.
I guess Metallica would be a front runner, but
so want to apologize for all the name butchery today. We did our best. It's not our Ukrainian. Surprisingly, I know is not one of our first languages. So apologies to them. We did our best.
Yeah, we tried. We did what we could. But just wanted to thank you guys again and remind you to like our socials, TikTok, Instagram. Like us on YouTube and hit us with those subscriptions and press the bell as well. Be notified for new episodes. And then we love those 5-star ratings on all of the podcast platforms, specifically Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And then we also have a $5 Patreon that'll give you access to our private Discord, as well as a shout out on an episode like the one you heard today, and the ability to vote on future episode topics. So thank you, everybody. It's been great.
That's right. We'll see you guys next week.